Thanks for tuning into BQ Prime. A whistleblower at TCS has flagged off a Bribes-For-Jobs scam. Now, this scam, we don't know the details of this scam. What we know is that this does not affect the bottom line of the company. It does not involve the top management, also known as key managerial personnel of the company, which the company has also clarified. But TCS is investigating this scam. What they don't call it a scam. They are saying that breach of code of conduct between a staffing company and the and TCS itself. Now, the point here is that this is a much larger issue. It's not just about TCS. It's about the industry itself, the industry's ability to conduct business with top IT companies in a manner which reflects integrity and fairness. Now, let's try and get people who are in the staffing industry, the key vendors who supply services, provide services to companies like TCS, Infosys, and other such companies. We are now joined by two very important people in the industry. Let me welcome Lalit Singh, founder and CEO of Marquee, and Kamal Karanth of Xfino. He is also co-founder of Xfino. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Murli.
Thank you for having me, Murli.
Welcome. So let me start with Lalit. Lalit, the biggest question is, how does this business function? Contracts are given to you, you supply services to them. How big is this industry? What does this involve?
Okay, so let me touch upon the first part, which is how big this industry is, because that may be pertinent. Then we'll go on the functioning of this industry as a whole. IT staffing business is significant and it continues to grow. Technology plays a crucial role in almost every business. The IT industry is highly reliant on skilled professionals with expertise in vast domains such as cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, data analysis, software development, tech organization, and more. The growth of the IT staffing industry can be attributed to several factors, including the rise of digital transformations that have taken place lately. Now, if you look at the overall size, the staffing industry per se, recent data says that it is around $10 billion industry. IT being one of the significant contributors, you can assume that it's a very, very big market size and it continues to grow regularly. The next question that you asked was, how does it actually function? There are multiple models. There can be contractual models, there can be permanent hirings. Many cases, especially with rising, demands rather I should say, the shrinking margins of the IT players. If you remember the earlier era where people used to maintain a bench strength of around 30%, freshers they will hire and they will train, and now that time has gone. The time has changed, and now more often than not, they are more reliant on the flexi-staffing, wherein the staffing players like Meraki, which is my company, we recruit for them. So they will be giving their requirements. They might give us job descriptions. We'll have a discussion. We'll do hunting, recruit for them, and then finally they are placed over there. So there are multiple steps involved in there. This is one model which is very prominent. The other one, which is called RPO, Recruitment Process Outsourcing, wherein if they are running into big turnkey projects, they might in turn outsource their entire staffing requirements to us. The number of hires can be 100 to 500, and in that case, we actually station our people over there in the client's premises, and they start coordinating. They not only do initial screening rounds, but also do multiple rounds of interviews to finally hand them over the final core thing. So that way, the entire process becomes expeditious and timely recruitments can happen. So there are multiple models. Many a times it can be on our payroll, it can be on their payroll, depending on the kind of agreement that we have between us.
Right. So yeah, so that's a very interesting observation. Let me take this question to Kamal. Kamal, see, as Lalit pointed out, it's a flexi staffing model that is largely adopted because of the huge demand, because of the skill crunch. How does this flexi thing work? Because see, there, my compulsion as a company to get a project done will force me to quickly close something. Is that how it works, Kamal? Can you share your thoughts?
Before I get to that, can I just add a bit on where exactly this staffing as an expert stands? Now, if you look at the balance sheets of the large IT services companies, there is a tab called subcontracting. And if you look at it carefully over the last 2 years, the growth has been significant. Now, not all IT services companies report that as a separate head, but if you look at the top 4 who reported them, which is to the tune of almost 16,000 crores a quarter. Of course, these are global figures, so there's a lot of dollar involved in that. So that growth over the last 2 years has been 60%. What was 10,000 crores a quarter is 16,000 crores a quarter just for 4 companies, right? So what it means is the rise of this 60% also means that this is where the staffing companies or whatever service providers, different names under which they are called, come into play. And that is where, all the things that we're talking about, mostly this subcontracting is nothing but providing employees on contract. Now, they could be in various modes. They call it SOW, time and material, just pure contracting. So with all these, it is basically means a staffing company is providing, employees which are their employees to these companies on a secondment basis. Now, for some of these large IT services companies in the US, the spend per annum is close to $1 billion. So if you just look at the top 10 IT services companies, and thereabouts between $800 to $1 billion they spend in US alone, right? So the stakes involved in terms of quantity is pretty high. Now, for the staffing companies involved, they deploy these people in an average salary of anywhere between 50,000 rupees a month to about almost 2 lakhs rupees a month in the Indian context. Okay. And obviously, in the global context, you have to remember that could range from about $60,000 per annum to the range of about $120,000. So that's the range in which it gets operated. So obviously, the dependency on staffing providers is high because it gives them flexibility. You can mobilize them, ramp up really fast, and you really want to demobilize them. The staffing companies help you because they're not really your employees, and that's how the flexibility has been the kind of an advantage that large IT services companies have utilized. It applies to even the MNCs as well. So we believe in the Indian context, on an average, about 4 to 6 lakh people work as IT contractors with all the large firms, which is irrespective of IT services, Indian firms or multinationals. So that's the number of people who are working at any given time.
Right. Okay. So I mean, it's a huge business. Very clearly, both of you have pointed out. And so the question is, the whistleblower. We don't know the details of what the whistleblower has said. All that the company is saying, that TCS is saying, is that it's a breach of code of conduct of some employees and some vendors. Now, what could be the breach? Lalit, if you could explain what is this code of conduct, how will that breach be? Does it necessarily lead to bribery or some kind of cut or kickback or whatever we call it?
So I'll put this question into 2 different paradigms. One will be, what is that code of conduct? See, there is always a fair play code of conduct that we all operate in industries as a whole, right? We as a staffing players, or otherwise them as so-called clients of us, we have a fair arrangement between us wherein they have need of manpower, we provide them, and it is accepted practice because that's what we do as business, right? Where the flaws come, where the breach of conduct can be from the perspective that to draw undue advantage, to bring in more contracts to you. You happen to, as you rightly said, can be entity under a table or whatever you want to name it. You happen to pay some bribe to someone, and that becomes certainly a breach of code of conduct from that perspective between these 2 organizations. Now, In this current context, I'll take liberty to answer the next question, maybe from your side. I'll say that in this current context, if you look at the Tata Group as a whole, I mean, for generations, they have been known for the fair play that they have been doing, right? So, and on other side, no, we are one of the vendors who are associated with them for other group companies. We know what kind of stringent norms they follow for vendor empanelment. Until you have, as a staffing player, if I don't have a great corporate governance in place, it's very difficult for me to get empaneled with them. So on the both sides, I see a very unlikely event of anything happening like that. And even the latest statement from TCS, if you read that, they are clearly saying, and I mean, they are denying and saying that, in fact, forget about everything else. The department in the question, RMG, which is Resource Management Group, it is just an internal resource allocation department. They don't deal with external agencies. They don't deal with staffing players.
Right.
So the very question of bribe being in this context kind of gets ruled out from their own investigation perspective. And if you ask me, even I find it very unlikely. I know there are situations when people have done in past, there will be situations they can do, but there will be very, very small players, Murli. I mean, I don't see large large players like staffing industries that we are talking about, who are governed and they are part of the entire federation. Very difficult for them to get into these kind of malpractices. I'll be surprised to hear that.
Right. No, so that's very interesting to note. So let me take this question to Kamal. So if RMG, as Lalit says, is not some, that is resource management group, does not play a direct role. So who does a typical staffing agency deal with at, let's say, TCS or Infosys, not particular one company, who would be actually awarding the contracts?
So let's start with how an empanelment of an external supplier happens, right? So various interfaces, decide whom they want to empanel. For example, there's a business head who says, I want the so-and-so supplier for the reason that they bring certain niche skill supply into play. Let's say there is an X company which is very good in analytics or skills. They will say they want to empanel, right? So business gets involved. Then procurement teams get involved because they are the ones who do the due diligence of these suppliers to see whether they have the right credentials, financials, and all the things that is required as per the company's norms. In some cases, it's a talent acquisition team and HR teams that get involved, right? So also legal gets involved to see that there are certain requirements that each company has. So these are the four interfaces likely in most companies with external suppliers. To see whether they have to, onboard them at all or not. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, once they are onboarded, obviously there is an annual review of how they are doing. On a day-to-day basis, many of them will be dealing with the same interfaces. They'll either deal with the HR team or they'll deal with the talent acquisition team, or some of them will be directly dealing with the, businesses, because that's where they will be interviewing and onboarding people, right? So the frequently interacted teams would be talent acquisition and businesses who are actually hiring them. Okay. So those would be the interfacing point. Having said that, the resource management groups in some other companies would actually be allocating the people who have come from these suppliers to various projects. So any of these interfaces, if not governed well, can turn rogue. That is what all organizations have to remember, that all these interfaces that they have can lead to any of these violations depending on who's there in that seat. Companies can have great policies, some of them known for well-known governance systems and ethics, but there could always be bad apples in great companies, and that's when great companies stand up and take action and also declare in public. Many of them actually had it out without even declaring. So I guess these interfaces are multiple, and any of these places can actually lead to violations is what my submission is.
Right, a very valid point. Great companies do come out, they will investigate and they will take corrective steps. Lalit, let me take this question to you. Do you think that this practice of violating, as they call, the terms of the code, is this all pervasive in the industry? Because you I think you are also heading the federation, and you must have told and set some standards in the federation. Is this a problem that we come across the industry?
So I'll say that this industry, if you look at the staffing industry as a whole, there are a lot of unorganized players, a lot of them. In fact, lately, if you speak to the largest of the clients and even mid-level, there is a constant endeavor from them to replace these local contractors with some national players, some players of repute who can take this forward in a more organized fashion. So, because there is a prevalence of unorganized players in this field, we do keep hearing about these phenomena because these unorganized players, the local contractors, they will have a tendency to get undercut. Usually, it's very difficult for them to get organized entry into large corporations. So they would like to do some kind of setting, as they call it, to get into that kind of organizations. So yes, at that level where there are small players, it is possible to do that. As soon as you get into an organized structure, and when you become an organization who is of repute, someone who is proud of the corporate governance, for the sheer reasons that until you are like that, your clients won't respect you, right? Then you automatically assume that responsibility. And I believe that then it becomes very difficult for you as an organization to fall in that kind of trap. And I see a lot of large players in this industry have set highest standards of governance from that perspective, including us. Having said that, rightly said by Kamal, employees, until you have that driven culture when it percolates down to each and every employee of the organization, sometimes, as they say, one rotten egg can actually spoil the entire basket. You need to be very, very vigilant. And when time comes, you need to stand up and say that this has happened. For example, TCS did acknowledge that there have been some breach of code of conduct in this case. And then finally, when they investigated, they are saying that no, doesn't seem like that kind of possibility. So I believe that yes, there is a possibility. Very rare if you have basic corporate governance in place, whistle blowing in place, and so on and so forth. It becomes very difficult. Where lower level, the low end contractors, yes, there is a tendency to fall in that kind of trap, and there is a constant endeavor from clients, the large corporate players, to move on from them and come into fore of the organized players who have set larger and higher standard of governance.
Right. So, Kamal, if you could add to this, have you come across any such instances from any other IT companies, which may not be at this scale where they may not have disclosed? Have you come across any such instances?
This is like a widely known practice. I think privately, if you ask people, they will actually list down the companies where this is very rampant. It's just that this is a 20-year-old story just broken now, honestly. All of us know who actually indulges in these practices. Some of us keep out of it, and some of us engage with it depending on how desperate we are for business. It's not just in IT industry. I was in pharma industry before. Every industry has its share of what I would call as alliances, nexus, call it bribe to get businesses. So IT is no different. The spend obviously is high and massive, and multiple channels to sort of get these favors done by suppliers. So it's a well-known secret, and it's not just in India or Indian companies. Or let's say, we shouldn't actually talk about just small companies are indulging in it. I think even there are large companies who actually encourage these practices. So very widely known. I think the staffing companies know which are the companies which indulge with it. Some deal with them, some don't. So I would put it at that it's all privately well talked about, well documented. We all know who takes how much and where. We just don't talk about it.
Okay, that's a very interesting observation and candid and frank one from Kamal. So, if as you rightly said, it's a 20-year-old kind of story which has come to light. It's maybe making headlines because it's IT. So, one last question to both of you. Kamal, I will come back to you again. So, if this probe has to go on a correct and let me say a proper process which will bring people to book and strengthen the process, how should it go?
Yeah, I think they may have a certain way. I'm sure they all deal with big, large consulting companies. I'm sure they'll do forensic audits of the money trails, if that is involved, who's involved, kind of stuff. But I would rather go ahead and talk about what would be ideal going forward. I think clearly, like audit firms have, let's say, limited period that they work and they're reshuffled. I think all large IT companies which have spends like this in billions should encourage that they shuffle their partners. Clearly, after 5 years or whatever that period they think is right. They should also ensure that the people who interface with the staffing partners are rotated, job rotations as they do it. These are the functions which are vulnerable. Nobody should stay in their job for too long. So that's second. And we should ensure also that the alumni do not become suppliers to their own bosses. That's another way where these entries get made all the time. And a proper due diligence of a multi-department due diligence, if they can do while onboarding, these suppliers will be of great help. You shouldn't leave the decision to a single point discretion. So these, and obviously there should be a widely, documented, transparent whistleblower policy so it can be identifiable as soon as it's detected. An ombudsman policy which is known to people, and every year they should actually ensure that no single supplier should have more than a single-digit share, and that would also reduce some of these overdependence and unfair practices that companies can possibly be lured into.
Okay, some very important suggestions coming from Kamal with respect to fair practices, with respect to merit. Concluding remarks from Lalit before we sign off for the show.
I think points are well covered by Kamal on what should be done. My single take and strong take still remains is that as large corporates, it's our responsibility to ensure that malpractices are curbed. And I'm sure there will be history why Kamal is saying, but I personally have been in touch with a lot of colleagues, friends in this industry, and I believe that over a period of time, for multiple reasons, for our own reasons also, people had tendency but have moved on from there. And a lot of these players, us at top, we do try to ensure these practices are not encouraged. And as pointed out, a couple of points, whistleblowing to having rules and regulations in place to implementing robust, systems of overviewing the things and having some kind of audit mechanism, internal as well as external. They all together come in for to ensure it doesn't happen. It is not good for either parties anyways, and it is important that we come together and strongly hold hands of each other to say that we won't encourage these kind of practices and let this entire thing foster in a manner which will help us grow together in a fair manner. So I'll say that there is a way to deal with, and I think we have come a long way from where it might be. I don't personally see a lot of them happening right now at large corporate levels.
Wonderful. Okay, so gentlemen, thank you so much, Kamal and Lalit, for joining our viewers and taking them through this very important critical issue for the IT industries, which did not come to light, as Kamal rightly pointed out. Thanks once again for tuning into BQ Prime.